All right, thank you all for joining us again today with the International Association of Woodcarvers. Today is October the 3rd at 3 p.m. and today in our meeting we're excited to have Kathryn Overcash with us. Kathryn's going to come on and talk to us about how she creates her bark houses. Kathryn resides in Richmond, Virginia, and she runs a website called Art from the Bark. So she'll be on with us in just 1 second. I did want to let you know that coming up in the coming weeks, we've got James Ray Miller that's coming next week. James will be doing flat plane carving with us. After that, on October the 17th, we got Isaac Middlemiss. He's actually going to come on and do a demonstration of carving pumpkins. So tune in for that. That'll be perfect timing for Halloween coming up. October 24th, we'll have Mr. Russell Scott, who's on with us today, that's going to be coming on to do a demo. On October the 31st, we'll have Chris Hammock come on. Chris is going to come on and talk about his carving journey. He's a member of the Caricature Carvers of America, and he'll be joining us on Halloween on October the 31st. On November the 7th, we'll have Mr. Jared Wood that's going to be coming on with us. He's going to do a demonstration. November the 14th, we'll have Mr. Dave Stetson joining us once again. Dave's agreed to come on and do a demonstration for us as well, and he's going to talk about upcoming classes that he has coming up. And then on November the 21st, we will have Kevin Applegate come on, and Kevin's going to talk about his carving journey. So we have quite a few things coming up down the line as far as these meetings go. I also wanted to let you know that we asked for people that join us to go out and also follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, follow our YouTube page, and also like and be a subscriber there. So if you miss any of these meetings and you want to go back and watch those, make sure you look over on Facebook or look on YouTube, and you'll be able to find the videos there. So with having said all of that, I'll go ahead and turn the meeting over to Kathryn Overcash. Again, Kathryn, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing about your bark houses.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about bark and creating these wonderful bark houses. I've been carving for about 15 years now. In about 2009, I took a class with Rick Jensen, and he got me turned on to these whimsical houses. And I've taken a lot of classes from him, so a lot of what I do is very similar to his techniques, because stuff he taught me already. And then, of course, I've adjusted for my own personal preferences as well. I'm going to show you some of my houses here. I'm going to have a little problem with the camera a little bit, it seems like, because it's in reverse mode. But I'm going to show you the first house I carved from Rick Jensen's video. It was just a little one. He has a little video out there on carving these bark houses. It hangs on the wall. That was the first one that I carved. And then I took a class from him in 2009. And here's the house I carved in his class. And this is this is the first bark house I carved in the round. So it's 2 pieces of bark together, glued together and everything. And it's hollow on the inside. And then I've carved a lot of other houses too. One of the ones that most people recognize is the one with the dragon on it. Now this dragon is carved into the same piece of bark, so it's not an add-on. The little guy is the same way, he's just carved in there. Got into some problems when I didn't think it through, trying to carve into his face after I had it all together. And so anyway, that's pretty much what I do. A lot of the stuff I do, I like to carve the houses with the little people and stuff on there. Let me grab another one here. This is another one. These are the style of windows that I like to really do. They're little branches. I like to really have the branches come up and everything into the eaves. And I have some other ones that I don't have good examples, but here's a little guy here with this little dog. He's hugging this little dog. So that's the kind of stuff I like to do, is that I like to add on. It's not actually added on, but it add to it a little bit. Here's another little house that I do. This one here has the little leaves on it instead of the shingles. And you can really see that one has a lot of branches and trees. And then you can look down here at the bottom and you see more of the rock structure. So we'll go over some of those techniques on how to do that. The first thing that people ask me is, where do I get my bark at? Well, I have to order my bark, unfortunately. We don't have very good bark here. We have the eastern cottonwood bark on the East Coast, and it probably goes by around central the United States over to the East Coast. You find a lot of the eastern cottonwood trees. Let me show you a couple of pieces here. I think this one here, this piece here was found on the Potomac River. We're not sure, they could have came up from Ohio. And this little piece, it's not very thick, it's very thin bark, but that's the kind of stuff we can find around here. Most of what I find is even smaller than that around Virginia and Maryland areas. And so that's the eastern cottonwood bark. But some of the stuff I really like is the black cottonwood bark, and that's a lot thicker. The black cottonwood bark you'll find up in British Columbia and Montana. Let me show you a couple of those. This is more like it. It's really big. Notice it has a crack in it. I'd like to talk about that here in a minute. See here, and just another crack there. So when you're getting this stuff and you get it in bulk, a lot of times the stuff comes in and it's cracked. So that's a piece. This piece here, I believe, comes from Montana. It's also black. And notice the crack. You'll see that a lot when you get this wood and they throw it in a box and ship it to you and it gets all banged around. Or it could be like that just coming off the tree. I don't know why, but I get a lot of it that's almost unusable as far as trying to take advantage of the whole piece. Either have to glue that on, but the easiest thing on something like this, when you get bark like this, is just take that off and just go ahead and use it as it is. Most of the bark that I've been using here lately is Plains cottonwood bark. It comes from North Dakota, eastern Montana, and you'll find it in Colorado as well. So it's pretty thick as well. It's a little bit different texture. So it's seems like it's more red than it is with the black cottonwood bark. Then there's what's a Fremont cottonwood bark. This is a piece of Fremont cottonwood bark, and that comes from Arizona. You can get it in Utah and New Mexico area. This I don't like to use, and it could be just a supplier that gave me a whole bunch of this stuff. But if you notice right through here, it has a lot of cracks in here, but it's not just cracks, but it has a lot of fibers. You see the fibers on this side of the bark? Well, you'll find that same stuff inside here. As you go carving, you think, oh yeah, this is going to work out really good. And all of a sudden you get this pocket of this fiber and it really kind of ruins everything for you because it does make a big hole. It's not like it's real thin bark pieces. It's actually just fiber and it's fall apart on you. You really can't glue that up too well. So I don't use Fremont cottonwood bark, although a lot of people do. If that's what they have, they probably can go out and pick some really good stuff. But one of the problems buying on eBay is that you just don't know what you're going to get. So that's the different kind of bark. I used to get most of my bark from Alex Bissell, and here recently I've been buying it from Jim Hart. Now, Alex Bissell, it's been years, but he quit selling it. He decided to retire, so that was my source for Montana. Jim Hart also just retired this year, and here's my source from North Dakota. So now I'm having to go out and try to find some other sources. There's a guy from, I don't know exactly how you say it, Lois Hills Sawmill, George. He has some North Dakota bark. So next time I have to buy some bark, I'll probably go to him and check him out. Also, a lot of the bark I bought in bulk through Western Canada Cottonwood Bark site. You go out there, take a look at their stuff. They have some pretty good bark as well. It has to get imported in though. That's the only bad thing. And the first piece that I ever got was from Chipping Away, and so they sell it too. So usually when I try to buy bark, I try to buy something that's around $8, $9 at the most for a piece of bark per pound. Everything's per pound. So you can find it for around $5 a pound. But then you have to add on the shipping, and the shipping is what's going to be the killer on the bark. It costs just as much as shipping as it does for the piece of bark. So you have to be kind of careful, watch out for that. So, okay, let me go on. So those are later on, I'll go ahead and post those websites or those sources so you can go and find some bark. I'm going to go ahead and switch this over to carving on the houses and everything, and how to prep the bark and everything. So I'm going to switch over to a different camera so you can see that. Give me a second here. You can see if I can remember how to do that. Okay, so there you see a couple pieces of bark. I'm going to reverse the screen so I can see it better. All right, that puts it in the right view for me. Okay, if you have any questions, just go ahead and put it up on the chat and we'll try to catch them as we go. So can you hear me okay? From this view, can you hear me?
You're good.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. One of the things you want to do is try to find a piece of bark that is wide enough and thick enough. You don't have to have really big bark to make a house, so don't think you have to have the biggest stuff out there. It's not always the best. It usually has cracks in it. Find you a nice piece. This piece that you see here, this looks like black cottonwood bark. It's very smooth on the outside. That's why I'm thinking it's probably black cottonwood bark. A lot of the Plains cottonwood bark is really rough. So I think this one's Plains cottonwood bark. You look at the different, you can see the different in a texture. So you kind of look at that a little bit. So what the first thing you want to do is try to plane your piece. And when you plane it, you can plane it together or you can cut it in half first. So if you plane it together, I usually let my husband do the planing for me because those machines are scary. He uses a joiner to get it flat for me. And then I cut it in half after it's been planed, and then I can glue it together. For the small pieces, I can take it myself and do that on any of the, what do they call those, belt sanders. So I use a belt sander and sand it down. If you use a regular sandpaper, try to do it on a flat board. You just have to be careful that when you're doing it, that you're making a figure eight as you're sanding so that you're not curving that blade. I mean, the edges going back and forth. So you need to make sure you're flat with that. So, okay, so that's pretty much getting it prepped. Once I have it prepped, I have to glue it up together. And I use a little piece of cardboard in between. See if I have this right. So what I do is I put a little piece of cardboard in here, right here, and I use school glue. Right here, a little bit of the school glue, Elmer school glue, and it has to be washable. And I tell you, don't use any off-brands that they say is washable because it's hard to get some of that off the bark. So this actually comes out pretty good. What you need to do is use a little piece of cardboard like this. This particular piece has some writing on it. You can use something like this, a little cardstock. Just make sure it's thick enough. So if you have plain bark, cardboard like this, and you don't have to worry about the image coming off on your piece. So try to find some pieces that's like that. When you have a piece like this, the best thing to do is to go ahead and sand it down just a tiny bit and get some of that picture off, only so that the glue will adhere easier to the bark and it's not going to slide around on you. So what you want to do is just go ahead and take a little bit of this glue. And if you notice, I have it up high. It's because when I get ready, when I open this up, I want this to go in between my pieces. That way I can see it break that cardboard later on. But I just put a few little drops on it. You don't need a whole lot. You don't need to glue up the whole thing. Can you see that? It's just a little bit. Put it together, put a little clamp on it, let it dry. Now you're ready to do a house in the round. Let me clamp that up. I let it dry. I just let it set for even, overnight. It dries faster than that, but that's what I do. So that one's going to be ready to go. Next thing I want to do is go over the layout of the bark. And this is really the layout of the house. I'm going to be using this one house to show you examples, so it makes a little bit more sense. Didn't catch what that question was. I'll have to come back to it a little bit later. Okay, so when we're looking at these houses, I'm going to use this one for an example. What we want, you see here how I have the bark, it's one side is higher than the other. So when you're cutting your bark, make sure one of them's a little bit higher than the other. The reason you do that is for your chimney. You want your chimney to be the highest point, then your roof line, and then your gable line. If you're going to have a gable to the side, I'm going to show you on the other house here in a second. But so you want to try to keep one piece higher than the other. So if you look at this one, it's not drawn out exactly the same. You want to make sure your roof line is also crooked in a figure S. If you look at this one, can you see it okay? It's going to come around like that. Looks like a piece of broken off of here. So it's going to be like that. And then your gable is going to be lower. Chimney's the highest. And of course, these are all guidelines. You don't have to do any of it. You can just do whatever you want. On the chimney side, when I pick my bark, I try to figure out where I want that chimney to be first, because I like it to be the furthest point out. So if I have a piece of bark that has a piece really standing out far, I'm going to use that side for my chimney, and then I'll work around that. When I have my chimney in here, what I want to do on this part, I want to follow the same direction as that chimney, the chimney line and the roof line in the same direction, so that I can get behind here. If I took this and drew my line going this direction toward my chimney for my roof line, I'm going to have a hard time getting behind there. So you want to go ahead and make that round deeper in here. So then you can draw your other line opposite. There's just like C's on each side. Okay, and then I have the chimneys coming down. This piece here is not put together. It's one of my sample pieces, so I don't ever glue it up. But my chimney's coming down. I'm going to have 2 points for my roof. I don't draw all this on there initially, but this is just for showing. So here's one of my roof lines here. That's the top part. Then I'm going to have another part of my roof line, and this is going to be the underneath. So if you look at this house here, you will see that there's bark all the way across here. So this is the top black line that on the top piece, and then the underneath. Can you see that? That's going to be the bottom of it. So you have 2 different lines there. And then you're going to have the foundation. All right, here's the foundation. Kind of draw this out in your mind at least ahead of time. I like really steep roof lines and a very narrow base for the house. So you'll see mine are kind of squatty, but that's kind of the way I like it. And you can do however you want. You can make it 2-story if you want. Okay, and I'd like to have posts on mine. And this is one of those artist kind of things that you have to do, is that you need to have odd numbers of stuff. So I try to find good places for my posts, and you'll find that I usually have 3, but sometimes only 2 works. So to me, it's whimsical. If I have 2, it's fine. So here's 2 posts on this side. This is going to be my front door, and this is the eave or the gable. And then on this side, I only have 1 post. So that's 3 posts I'm going to have on this particular piece. And this is the other front door. So you got a front door on both sides, or a front door and a back door. So both of the ends, at each end is a door. or you can have a window at the end, but the doors normally are not on the side. You'll see that it's a little bit harder to put them in the side, especially if you want an open door. And then if I'm going to draw a little person or something on the piece, I stick them and draw a little stick man in there so I know where that's going to be. And I'll be blocking those out. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of carving. And I'll show you the tools that I use. I'm going to bring these tools out just for those that have not been doing any carving, but I'm just going to bring these are my big tools. My mouth is dry. I must be nervous. All right, I just wanted to show you that for those that are really new to carving. I'm going to be saying these numbers, and I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up so you can kind of get an idea. So this is a number 3. It's pretty flat. It's not a number 1. A number 1 is completely flat. This is a number 5. These are very common, so it has a little bit more curve. This is number 7. This is the one I like the best. It's kind of, if you notice, it's in between all these. So it gives a nice curve to everything. I don't know if you can really see the curvature of that. Then number 9 is more curved. And then the number 11 is really a complete U. So that one's the tightest curve. Okay, so I usually choose number 7 when I'm carving these houses. Okay, so here I have a house. I've drawn it out. Here's my chimney and my roof line. So you see my chimney is the highest point. It has a natural bark here, and I like to usually use the natural edge when I can. It adds to it. See here, this piece has a natural edge. A lot of times you can't because you have to cut the bark. So this particular piece has got a natural edge here and the other side doesn't. I'm going to go ahead and put my gloves on here because I like to carve with gloves. Bark is pretty rough on your hands, so I usually use 2 gloves, at least when I'm starting out. Once I have some of the roughness off, I switch over. This is an arthritis type glove. It's kind of nice because it has, my fingers are sticking out through there so I can see it. I also have some problems with the strength in my arms, so I'm going to carve toward me. If you can carve away from you, that's the best thing to do. I'm also on the carving board. Don't ever do this in your lap or against your chest. That's kind of dangerous. But here, I'm going to turn this gouge toward me. I'm going to carve this area up to this line to start with. I'm just going to start this. I already have a house already done, but I wanted to show you. If you notice, this number 7 automatically makes curves. That's why I like it. It's a whimsy tool. Makes whimsy cuts. I'm not going to try to carve all this because I'll be in a hurry and hurt myself. So what you want to do, carve all that all the way up, following your guidelines around here, blocking out your chimney. Let me go ahead and get another piece and I'll show you. This one here is closer of being done. I want you to see that there's a couple issues with this piece. Right in here, can you see the cracks that are in here? This is some of those bad pieces of bark, but I figure I can use it anyway. I'll feel it, you know, so it has cracks, bad places in it. But heck, somebody's got to carve the stuff, so I guess I'll carve it. Here you can see it goes all the way through. Sometimes I don't notice that until I cut the piece in half, and then I realize, great, now I got big gaps in there. For students, I don't usually sell those kind. I keep those for myself. So I'm always trying to find some good stuff for students when I'm looking for bark. Okay, so this is one of the hardest places. Here's a gable here. Here's the chimney, and we have this roof line, but we haven't done anything to it yet. So this needs to be brought in a little bit more. I'll just bring it in some more. And what I like to do is bring this peak down so that this peak is below the chimney line. It's not very far down. I'm not gonna go do the whole thing because I really don't have time to carve this whole house. But you can see, bringing that down. There's a piece that's broken there, so I can glue it or just pop it off. There, I didn't need that piece. It looks better now. That's what I do with any pieces that want to come off, let it come off. When you're at this stage, it doesn't really matter. Most of the pieces that fall off or break and stuff, I just take them off. A lot of people want to keep it, especially if they're new to carving bark. They want to keep those little pieces on there. I just break them off. I don't really need them. Okay, so one of the hardest things here, let me go ahead and carve this gable down too. Looks like I did some front work already on it. I shouldn't have done that until I took some of this off. And then you have to reshape. Can you guys see that okay? I keep on moving it toward me a little bit more. You see that? So we want this to be lower than the roof line. And the roof line here is a little bit lower. The hardest part is getting back behind here. So what I do is I usually take a large V tool. It doesn't have to be a certain brand, whatever you have. And I usually go around with a V tool. This is soft, but it still has hard spots in it. Let me cut that back a little bit more. One of the things I didn't tell you about, and I'll show you here in a minute, is that bark on the outside is really, really rough on your tools. Once you get past the outer part of the bark, I don't think it really hurts your tools. A lot of people complain about it, but what you'd have to do is you sharpen them. And I'm not the best at that. Once I get the chimney going, I usually take another tool, a smaller one, and I start going down in, with another tool between the two instead of the V tool. You see that? Start opening that up. What you have to do is really, you just have to figure out what tool is going to fit in there and keep going at it. After a while, you have all your tools out on your table because you just need to have, you have to have all those. Keep on going around until you get that brought out. I'm trying to do this in a hurry and I shouldn't. It's not a fast thing. And I tell people, don't worry about the chimney so much at the very beginning, because when you open this up, there's the edge of the chimney there with cardboard in it. Okay, when you open it up, you can get in there and work on that chimney as well. So you don't have to have it done at first. None of this has to be done all at one time. But what you want to do is try to give some kind of movement within your bark, within your roof line. And some of this will be done a little bit later too. What we want to do here is, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line across here. That's that part where I took off the bark. I'm going to end up putting our eave in here, like this, for the gable that comes across here. But what you want to do, what you don't want to do is carve here or here. This area here, you want to leave these two areas alone until you have it glued back together. Because what's going to happen is we've got to put clamps right here and here to clamp it back together. So don't carve there. If you do, what's going to happen is when you put that clamp on there, you'll probably crush anything that you worked on there. So it's best just to go ahead and just leave those two areas for later. But you want to go ahead and carve out the centerpiece all the way across. We're going to leave the post for last. So all we're going to do on the post is we're going to block those out. And I wanted to go ahead and show you that. So I'm going to take this V tool and go down to that line. Here's another piece that I'm just going to take that off. lot of times you glue those pieces on and later on they want to come off anyway. So it's best just to get rid of anything that's going to give you a hard time. And then we're going to carve. Sorry about that. Thing slipped out of my hand. Okay, so I've already carved some of this, so I wouldn't have to do the whole thing. So this is a post. Or maybe not. I don't think it's a post, actually. Now I'm looking at it. Let me look at this because I just took that chunk off. So I have a post. It's going to be in the center because this piece is sticking out. So I'm going to go ahead and put a post there. Have some nice bit of room there, and a post here. And maybe that was supposed to be a post. But we can have two if we want. Yeah, I think that's supposed to be a post. Maybe right here, because it looks like I cut right there already. So more than likely that was going to be a post, but so here's our post. I have to move that back a little bit more since I took that big chunk off. So there's a post. So what you want to do is you want to outline your post first. And what I've done is I've already done an outline here of the gable, the roof line and the foundation. You can see that? On the side, since I'm not going to clamp it, I can come on up into the eave. So that's not a problem there. It's just on the front. Okay, so what gives us the whimsy is right here, you want to start, once you have your V tool, I used the V tool to start with, to go up under here. When you do this, I'm going to try to see if I can show you this. You don't want your V tool up and down like this, like a V. You want to tip it. Okay, can you see that? Where I'm tipping it? You tip that, and it's going to make it flat underneath the roof line, like that. And when you do the foundation, you do the opposite. You flip it the other direction. I've already carved some of this, so that the foundation is flat with the V. Okay. And then what you're going to do is you're going to start from the center. This is the main part of the house, so the walls of the house. Make sure you can see this. If you can't, Blake, if you can holler at me. I can't read the computer from here.
No, you're in good shape.
Okay. Okay, so if you see here, I start from the center, go to the top of the roof line, turn it around, or if you carve it away from you, do it that way. That's safer. Okay, and then do that. Okay, now you can see it starts bulging. But if I had little people coming across and trying to walk on that, they're going to fall off. So I need to take it deeper. Okay, so go back with the V tool, take that deeper, and then come across here and take this one deeper. And leave your post. You can take it deeper too. Because all we want to do is get this shaped so we can put our windows in. Did you see that? It's not too bad on the outside, but some of this bark, it's pretty tough on the outside, but this is fairly soft once I get inside. So that's kind of nice. This is going to be the other post right here. Maybe. It's going to be a funky looking post. But it's okay, it's whimsy, right? Anyway, keep this up. I can do this for 3 or 4 hours if you guys want to watch. I won't do that to you. I just wanted to see how it's curving a little bit. It starts looking like a barrel. Can you see that? So you want it flat under here for under the roof line, and you want it flat here. If it doesn't get flat, you can always take a number 3 gouge and come across and flatten it out with a 3. Like this. Just take it in there and press in there. That's a pretty big 3 gouge, but it's the only one I had sitting right next to me. You can take smaller ones, you don't have to take big chunks. Okay. Then you're ready to draw your window on. I like to use the chalk when I draw I would normally finish all of it. I'm not going to take you through the whole piece. But normally after I get done with pushing this back, there's a little bit of room for the walkway. I would take that back a little bit more. I want to have nice steps. These are small. So you just make a whimsy window, no straight lines. That's what Rick's taught me, that, you know, no straight lines. So the whimsy windows. And I like to actually color the frame in with the white chalk. So what happens with this white chalk, if I make a mistake or if I don't like it, I could just spit on it and wipe it right off. No, I wouldn't. I could use water or a eraser. Okay, so here's a window. This is a basic window. What's important about these windows is that you leave a lot of room on these window panes. The frame, the grid that comes in there, those need to be thick because this grain is going up and down. When you have something this small, you can see how the little grain pieces in there. That means when you're carving this, the bark has a tendency, when you get that small, it wants to turn and pop out. So you have to be really careful. If you see it starting to pop out, just glue it up, super glue. So this is what I like to make my repairs with, is a BSI super glue. And if I'm going to continue working on it, I use the accelerator. But I tell you, the accelerator, if you can just set it aside and let it dry, you'd be better off. Accelerator makes it a little bit harder than just the glue by itself. Okay. Once you have your frame in, I'm going to go ahead and switch pieces again. So this guy, he's shrunk a little bit. I have all the windows drawn in. What you have to do is drill them out. When you drill them out, where's my drill? I had to find my drill. I almost knocked the camera over. When you drill them out, it's best to get about the same size drill bit as your windows, just a tiny bit smaller. What that's going to help with is when you go to carve these windows out, you just have the little corners to carve out. So that's going to make it a whole lot easier. So you're just going to take it, and I already used a punch to punch these. So if you notice, I haven't carved the outside of the frame yet. And the reason why is because my drill bit may travel. And if it does, then I've messed up the frame. That means I have to go further in. I'm not going to do the whole thing here, but that's what you're going to do. You're going to go all the way around. There on the door, it's important to carve that door out. I don't carve this out, the windows, but the door is important that you get the door far enough in where you want it, because when you're coming from the inside toward that door for the window, you want to make sure that you have your door in the right place. So these windows are going to be here. That's going to be the outside of the frame, but the door is going to be pushed in. So if you take some small tools and go ahead, and I like to use a small V tool. And outline that. And I do it with a small V tool because it has a tendency, my knife has a tendency to travel with the grain and go in a different direction than I wanted it to. I just have to find a knife now. Sat here trying to sharpen this thing earlier. What I do is go with the grain in here, with the V tool mark that I put in here, and I just outline this. This one looks kind of like a coffin. It must be Halloween time, right? So you notice the door is whimsy too. Most of the doors that I put on my houses look like, let me bring one across so you can see. So this house, you see it looks like a log. I like making everything look like logs across those windows. So this particular one, I'm just trying to hurry it up, so it's not going to be very fancy. And then you just take a flat tool. This one's not really flat. This is like a 7. That's pretty round. But that's what I got in my hand. That's a lot of times I just carve with whatever I happen to have in my hand. A 3 would have been better, But all I want to do at this point is take this thing back. And it's a pretty small door. Okay, so I'm going to have the frame is even with the edge of the house for now. When I go to do the outside of the frame later, the house goes back and the frame will stick out. That'll get you a little bit of the door there. So once you have all that in, then you can see here where I've cleaned up the chimney on this one. You can see it a little bit better instead of working in it. And you can see that it has the S curve. So the curve goes along with the edge of the chimney so you can get behind there. So that's the hardest part, is getting behind there. Even when you do the shingles, that's going to be the hardest part, is getting those shingles in there. And there's a little bit of curve going along that roof line. You notice here, I have left this front and this part here. I have my posts all pushed out here. So they're all blocked out and ready to go. So all I have to do is drill it. And oh, one more thing. When you carve these doors, if you want a door to have, if you want an open door, can you see if that door is open? This door here is open. Can you see it, how it's open? Okay, like that. What you want to do before you drill the hole for the window, you actually have to carve at an angle to get that door at the angle you want. If you have a post, sometimes the post gets in the way, so you need to do the opposite side of the post. But you carve in at an angle instead of straight on. So this particular door here is straight on. It's taken back a little bit. This door is carved at an angle. Can you see where my knife is at an angle in there? So if you look on this side, excuse me, you can see where I've hollowed it out already, and you can see part of the door. That's on the doors. So I have this house here that I started working on. This house now has a door that's opening. Okay, here's the post. This is where it's hard sometimes to get in here. But if you have an extra long blade or something, you can get in there fine. Get in there. And then when you want to drill, can you see it? A little bit of a crack in there, shadow right in here. Okay, so when you're going to put the window in, you have to do it after that, and you put it opposite angle from the door. This is kind of hard to show. Oops. But you want to go at an angle, because if you do it straight on, what's going to happen when you open that door, the window is going to move on you because it's at the wrong angle. Okay, that's all this one is showing. This was showing here that everything has been drilled. The posts have been drilled, so I know where my walls are. What's important is that you have enough room for that post. If I don't drill it, I don't know how far out on the wall I am from the house. So you have to drill holes in there so you can see that these two corners match up. Otherwise you start carving. I've done that before. I start carving and find out that my one side of my house is at a different level than the other side, and then my post doesn't work. And sometimes that's dangerous because you might go right through your house and put a hole in it. Okay, now we're going to open this thing up. Okay, this got a little chip in it that was already there, but this is where we glued that cardboard in. There's a little piece there is giving me a hard time. It fell in that hole. So I put a little putty knife in there, see how it fits in there after gluing that. And then I'm going to take this here mallet and I'm going to hammer it. Believe me, I'm hammering it. I used to put this, but I put this between my knees a little bit. And then once it starts breaking, you can hear it. It just breaks right off. And this one I have already carved inside there. So this is a surprise for anybody opening this house because it's already hollowed out. So what did you do at this point? is you're going to take it into the sink with some hot water, warm water. You're going to put it upside down in the warm water, and you don't have to have it very high, maybe a ½ inch or an inch. Let it soak a little bit, maybe a minute, and this here paper will come off. The cardboard will come off. Okay, usually I pull off as much as I can before I go in there because it's loose. Since there's only spots of glue on there, you don't have to worry about the whole thing. Remove some of these tools before I flip them out on the floor. Okay, at this point in time, we want to go ahead and hollow this thing out. And of course, I picked up the 7. That's just my go-to tool, but you can use something else, but 7's good. And what before I go any further, I want you to notice that there's a post here on this piece. I drew a line here. I need a glue up area, okay? So you don't want to forget about that. And you want to stay within that inside because we've got to glue these together. Now, if you notice, when this is put together, if I put it together with that line, draw your line so you know where it goes when you go to glue it back together. You have your line all drawn there. So if I carve this house, and if I'm not careful, what's going to happen is if I get too far to that post, what's going to happen is I'm going to have a big hole. So you don't want to have a hole there. So measure it out. Anything that sticks out, this happens to be sticking out here, but I'm not carving a window on this side, so I'm not going to worry about that side. I do have windows over on this side, which is going to be a little tricky, but that's okay. Okay, so I draw where I'm going to be doing my windows. I can go all the way up, all the way down in here. It doesn't matter. Sometimes I try to put like a floor in here, so I don't want to carve too far down. But I usually start carving this, and I carve in a circle. You can tell I'm not sticking with my lines. I'm not very good at lines. One reason I usually don't draw the lines on there is because I can't stick with them. But what we're doing, we're carving this out. We want to find those holes. So you can already see the holes right here. This one makes me a little nervous because it's already right there. I can see it. I'm pretty close to the outside. What I have is these little toothpicks. Let me grab one. And I like to measure these holes with the toothpick. I can't get in this way very easy, but I will go this direction. And you can see where that toothpick is. This is marked with a 1/4 inch. I got a little white tip on there so we could see it better. Usually I put a black, but then the black line, that's where it's going to be. And I pull it out until I'm right at the edge of that window, and then I can see how far I can go. So you want to go slowly once you hit that, so you have an idea of how thick that window is. So 1/4 inch is good enough. You can see how big this is real thick. So you want to keep on going till you thin it down. I'm not going to do it all because you guys are probably anxious to get home. Well, you probably are home. All right. So anyway, you keep on going till you get to this stage. So now when I put the, I go ahead and put that in there. Can you see it? I'm going to pull it up to the edge of that window. I put my fingernail on the other side here and I pull it out. Perfect. That's what you're looking for, about a 1/4 inch thick. And be careful because what happens is this bark, you know, it's at an angle like this. So you don't want to carve straight back. You always want to carve toward an angle. Always checking to make sure you're not too close to the edge. And if you're not finding your drill holes, be real careful because you might be too far up or too far down and you're going to end up going through the wall. So you be careful with that. Okay, the next thing to do is once you get the depth of your windows in, you want to go ahead and carve out the window panes. Now, when you do that, you want to start at the center of your window. I'm going to try to show this on here, but I have a sample that's a little bigger, and I'll try it with that. And you want to go from the center to the corner, from the center to the corner, and then you take it out. I tell you what, if you go trying to carve down this way, you're going to probably take that post out. So remember, we drilled the hole so we wouldn't have to take but just the corners out. So you just wiggle the tool back and forth. You're just making a stop cut, and then you take that corner out. Okay. Take another one out here. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but if you have 6 panes, you want to start from the center panes because you have more bark around you, and work it that way. And what happens, I don't know if you could see this little hole or not that I just carved, but it's at a funny angle because I've carved mostly on the outside. When I look in that hole, and you probably can't see it because you don't have the lighting behind it, but it looks just like a round hole on the other side. So you can turn it around and you can try to chip some of that out with your knife if you can get to it. And that helps. But really what helps most is taking this at an angle. I'm going to show you on another piece so that you can actually see it. So this one I've kind of drawn some black lines on there. This window. Really hard to see through here with all that bark underneath. So there's some holes, lines there. What you want to do is you want a vanishing point. So this part on the front is going to be thicker than the inside. So you want to carve at an angle down so that from the outside you don't see where it ends on the inside. Does that make sense? It's a vanishing point. So you go at an angle and get rid of the edges like that. If you have any problems with the windows, you can always use a diamond file and file it down if you have any problems with that. Okay. This is a good example. If you look at this black lines, you can see where that material is going toward the center. All right. I think we're almost done here, folks. Whoops, did it again. Okay, so what I want to talk about, okay, here, I glued this together. So I don't have a sample to glue together because I glued this thing together yesterday. So I don't have a sample, but when you get ready to glue it together, I usually put wood glue on just one side, clamp it up, and it has a tendency to slip and slide. Usually if I get 2 people, we can hold it together. Now, Rick Jensen, he has a better method for that. He puts little pegs inside so it'll hold it still and everything, and you don't have any slippage. What happens when the bark is crooked, the clamps want to go on crooked. But this one here, I glued up. After you glue it up, you can see that there's little pieces of glue on there. And I don't wipe it off until later, like now. So this is where your cleanup comes. And you're going to go ahead and take that off. And if you'll be cutting that off. And this is when you can go ahead and carve this out. I went ahead and carved the outside of these frames. While I had it open, I went ahead and carved the frames out. So the door still needs to be worked, just the framework. But that's just a matter of taking a small B tool and doing the outline. Once you get the outline, you just need to take another tool and take back the wall. So many times, I don't know what I'm teaching, but I have so many people who do the doors opposite. All of a sudden the door is sticking out further than their frame. I don't know what, I guess I'm not saying it right. So take the walls back. Here's the frame, the door is further in, and then the frame around that door. Okay. So you just work that in. Take a V tool, work around it. This particular one, what time is it? 3:54. Okay, running out of time here. Okay, so this particular one, I have an inside frame. So I've taken everything down and left a little bit of a lip. And then I came out with the outside frame. So I took this part back. When you do this, I did this when it was open so that it won't mess up the, in case I break it or something, I can fix it easier. Once I glue it up, it's hard to fix. And when you're going to fix the windows, if you have a pane come out, and this happens all the time, you can just take a little piece of the bark just cut a little slivers off and just fit it in there, glue it in with some super glue. And that should fix that up. Okay, let's see. At this point, I can go ahead and do the eaves. I would take my big B tool. And this too, you don't want it to all look the same, so give it a little bit of movement. That's what Whims is all about, is giving it movement. Okay. And inside of these frames, you want to give it, I usually have a crossbar. You can see this is really thick, so I got to work on that a little bit. But what I do, here's the first one I did. It only has one door, and it has a window on the back side. It only has one post, so do one at a time. Let me move that house so I can get this further down. So right here, you want some kind of decoration, something that's going to help support that roof. Even though it looks terrible, it's being supported somewhat. So you want to put some kind of tree branch or a V in there, something to support the roof. This particular house that I have here, I actually have a tree in there, and I actually have undercut that so it stands out away from the back. And here is another branch, just some ideas. You can see it has just, so you could just do anything. You could just kind of make it up as you go. Whoops. Okay, let's see, what do we want to do on this? Shingles. So the easiest thing to do on the shingles is just take a V tool, ready, is flip that V tool to the side so it's pointing down, and you can just go in a circle. I'm not holding this very good because I'm trying to get the picture where you can see it. I don't think you can see it too good. Anyway, you can do a solid line like that. Boy, that looks pretty bad. And then you just carve at the other angle. Make sure that V tool, can you see how I have that V tool turned away from the shingle you're carving? And it's going to put a ridge on there. So let me see, just so you can see it. There's a ridge right here. And you notice I didn't draw that, I'm sorry. Okay, so there's a little bit of a ridge there. On the ones on the other side, I'll show you a little bit better. But that's just a straight line, not really straight. It's a whimsy straight line. We carve it a little bit more to clean that up. What happens is this is leaving an edge where I've dug in. So I usually take a number 3. I don't know why I don't have a smaller one out here. And you can clean that up. I'll get a 3 out here in a minute. Your shingle, and you just keep on going like that. You layer them all the way across there. Really come out. I mean, when I do a quick house for sale or something for Renaissance or something like that, I'm in a hurry, so I don't do this type. I just carve them straight across. But for something that's more artistic or for enjoyment, I do it this way. I'm going to show you this again. This is the best thing to do. I put this in black. I usually don't use black on shingles because then you have to shave it all off, but you can see it better. Is I draw a guideline. So this is going to be just a guideline for me. And what I want to do is make the shingles in a different layers. I don't want them all on the same level like the straight line. I want these to be some up high, some lower, like that. So staggered appearance. So if you go ahead, and this one I carved already because I was doing it to update my booklet. If you go on my website under instruction guides, you'll find an instruction guide on how to do these houses. So, and it's free to download. So it's on PDF file. Just go ahead and log on and download it. I'll put the website out there later. on the Facebook post. Okay, so you're gonna go in, and this is, again, that angle. You wanna almost flatten that. Of course, you have to cut, so you don't want it too flat. You'll be going from this side, I'm going in toward the center. And then from this side, I'm going to flatten it to make this ridge, just like I did on the other side, but make sure that gouge, that V tool is turned so you can see. So, all right, so that's the first one. Then you want to do another one. I'm going to go in this way, but again, you're back up here. And you want to keep this pretty clean by coming in here and shaving all this off. And it preps you for the next one. It takes forever to do this, but it will turn out really nice. Here, I've dropped the shingle down. So this one's up higher than this one. One of the things I do too, I keep skipping steps, but a lot of times I'll carve without drawing any lines. I kind of know what I want to do here, so I don't really draw the line. But what's nice is draw these little tick marks down. If you do that, it kind of gives you an idea how big those shingles are. And it prevents you from having one shingle this high all the way across and the next one really big. So it's good to go ahead and give you a guideline of where you want the next one to start. Okay, and I'm carving this way so you can see it. And of course you go back up. The reason I'm going up is because the bark is going this way, it's with the grain. If I carve it down this way, I'm just going to show you. Let me go ahead and carve the bottom of it first. I will carve it down this way. Here I'm going against the grain. You see how it chips up a little bit? Right here. You don't get the clean cut like you do if you're actually going with the grain. So sometimes when I get behind the chimney, I have to do that in order to get back there. And then you can go ahead and clean these up. This is a number 7. Can you believe it? It seems like I have all my 7s out here today. Okay. So if you notice when I did that, I started cleaning up the shingles. If you notice when I kind of clean that up with the 7, it's giving it more shape. It's not flat, you know, so it's actually going to be cuter. See, if you go ahead and do this with these shingles, I have a little split right there. I'm going to take it off later. Can you see how that gives it more interest? Whoops, let me bring it down so you can see it a little bit better. How's that? Can you see it? Let it focus. Doesn't want to focus. I can't really see too good from the camera view because my glasses don't work too good on this. The other thing that you want to do to give it a little bit more whimsy, you see this? I'm going to go underneath this and I'm going to cut a groove in here. I'm going to take that off because it keeps bothering me. Now what's going on here is I'm giving it shadow. Now can you see it a little bit better? When you put the little shadow in there, it looks like your shingles are ready to pop off. Same here, go up this way. I'm not a knife carver, so I really don't like using knives. Knives are scary. Okay, so you can really see that shingle better now. You can tell the difference between that one and the next one. And you would do that. I usually carve a lot of it before I do that. But okay, so from here, you start from this point and you go this direction to the center line. From on this side, we're going to do the opposite, go from here to this side. And so try and brace myself here so you can see this without me putting my hands over the top. Here, you can see where I'm taking that. Now on this side, the high point is on this side. The reason you do this is because if I follow this pattern all the way through, you're going to look at this way and you're going to see a nice smooth transition of shingles. But if you look at this side, you're going to see it's really rough. So if you carved it straight through, because the shingles, you're seeing the edges of all the shingles one way, the other way you're seeing it smoother. I did a whole house one time and I got one side, the shingles, I did it all one way, and then I said I had to start over, cut off all the shingles and start again. So you do want to switch them out. Anyway, you keep on going with that. A lot of people always ask, hey, what do I do, you know, for the next row? Let me get a little marker. You want to see my marker? I'll do it in white. Is you stagger these. So get your line here, stagger them. Since this one's up higher, you can just come in and stagger it like that. Come back in and stagger on your line. Just kind of follow that line through. It just gives you a guide. That guide is really important when you're doing the eaves. And this particular one, I don't have the eave to demonstrate that on. When you get over here in your, I usually don't use a great big gouge like this, B tool, I use a smaller one. But you're going to find that you'll get in here and you'll have problems. And when you do, see, I had to come down. I can't go up because the chimney's in the way. So then you start being real creative with all your tools. You start pulling everything out you can to figure out, how am I going to get that shingle in there? If you get to the point where you can't get that shingle in, just take a stylus. I think this is, these two stylus here, this is a little wooden one. So you can get this at any craft store, or you can buy it from us. We sell them here. My husband told me to say that, or you can buy the tools here. Anyhow, you can get in here. You could take the side ball and use it. You know, it's not as nice, but you can actually get the groove in there. This tool is kind of cool. I don't know if you could see that one or not, but it has a little point on the end of it. This may be one of those, it's a stylus, but I'm not sure where I got this one. And you can go in, you get really good with that one because it's pointy. You still have to go through and try to clean it up inside there. So, and then, okay, I know you guys are about tired of this, but let me tell you about the siding. The siding is very important. There's no room for siding on this house. It's all used up. I'll use it right here. So when you put this siding on, you want to have some kind of breaks that are crooked. Notice the lines aren't straight. When I'm talking about the siding, you can see on here where it has the siding. See the little dots? See the lines? This little house is my little practice house. I didn't carve on at all. You can see the siding better on this one. So you have your lines. Take a little small V tool. All my tools are getting buried over here. And outline that. And then if you really want it to show up, we want to do the shadow again. Here, you can take a knife. Go ahead and go across it with a knife. I like to come back and just shave a little bit of it off. I want you to see the difference here. I don't know if you can really see that too good. Bark is so dark. You either got too dark or too light with this wood stuff. Basswood's too light. But you can actually see the shadows much better when you shave off the V. So I used a little V tool and then I came back. Then you can use a stylus and you put the nails in. I'm going to take the smaller one. Bark's pretty soft, so you can press in anything you want. You don't want to do that all over the piece. It gets a little bit too busy. So just put them here and there and not on all of it. Let's see if this one has it. This one has smaller ones. Now this, I like to actually relieve some of these so that some of them stick out Some are deeper than others. It's hard to tell in here, but some of them are deeper. One of the last things you want to do, you're going to go through the whole thing and do that. I haven't really touched everything. If you go to my book, it'll go over most of this. It's the post is the last thing to do. And the reason you do the post last is because I'm always grabbing it right here. And if I have that post already carved in, I'm going to snap it. You know, so first thing that new carvers want to do is they want to make those posts. But you don't want to do that until you get really everything done. Then you can start thinning your post out. Okay, what you can do, that's a knife. We'll go to the gouge. You want to go in here and you want to, I use a knife to go through here to break that, where these drill holes are. Remember we drilled these holes? You can use a V-tool, and then you come back with a knife. This is good if you have a nice long knife. I didn't have my long knife out here. Go back over here and keep on going back and forth until you got that hole. I'm not going to break through there because it's going to take me a while to get that. You could also take a small number 3 and cut through there. I don't have a good 3 here, but here's one. So you can break through. Just don't put any pressure on the post itself. And you want to carve away from the house. You don't want to carve into the house. If you carve into the house and you have windows nearby, you maybe just put a hole in it. So really what you're doing is carving the post out away from the house. Get it away from that house. There's several kinds of posts that you can put in there. This is just a standard post, but you can put a tree shape where it's a Y, where they will come from one side to the other with a hole in the middle. Oh, yeah, I have one of those here. Let me grab it. One of the things too is you do not have to put shingles on your house. This particular house up here, this is a mushroom house. One of the ones I did with Rick Jensen. But this particular bark is beautiful. So what I did is I just went ahead and carved smooth, just sandpaper with Abernet, 400 grit Abernet, and sanded it down. But here's the post that I was talking about. You can see it's like a little tree. See here? Everything's kind of textured. On that, you can see how they have all these mushrooms on this one. It's a mushroom house. So anyway, I'll put that one back. I just wanted to let you know, you don't have to do shingles. If you get tired of doing shingles, you can always leave it smooth. I tell you, I'm kind of running out of time here. Rocks, I don't think I'm going to go over that too much right now. I mean, it's just a big old lump, and then texturing. I want to go over a little bit of the texturing though. When you're texturing the house, I like, my favorite is the texture with the stylus. You can see here where I've done that. Can't see very good. It shows up when I wax. That's what people have been wanting to know, is about the waxing. So let me finish that texture. Let me get to the waxing. All right. And push all my tools away so I don't cut myself. Okay, so when you finish the house, people always wonder, what do you finish your house with? You know, especially when people talk about being light and dark. It doesn't seem like anymore. It doesn't matter what you use. Everything makes everything dark. And what I like, okay, Meltonian. This was a Johnson product here. Meltonian, I'm going to make it real short. When they first started with Sara Lee, they made the Meltonian neutral, and they were using animal products in their wax. Well, when Johnson bought them out, they changed the blend and it started getting dark. So darker than it used to be. But you can't get the Meltonian hardly at all without paying a fortune for it. So what I did is I switched to Kelly. Can you see the Kelly? So I have Kelly. And what I've been really liking here lately, I'm missing one of my brands out here, is Monkey's Worth. And best money's worth. I'm sorry, money's worth and best. I don't know how many times I've said monkey. It looks like monkey to me, but it's money's worth. And they have the different colors, and I really like that. Oh, here, Dennis brought me a can of the other. This is the Club Classic. I really like it. It makes a nice shine. This one I like the best right now. So let me go ahead and use it so you can see how to do this. All right, I just need a house to put it on. I guess I'll use this one. I don't have one that's finished to actually show you, but I'm going to show you how it changes the
Can I ask a
colors.
question, Kathy?
Does somebody have a question? Can you see how dark it is? This will actually lighten up as it dries. But sometimes people like dark stuff, and you can use that Howard feed and wax. If you try to keep from getting oil-based finishes, that's good. If you completely let it dry, it'll be lighter than all these other ones. And you know, it really depends on the bark as well. I've noticed that some bark has minerals in it, and they will change the texture as well, or the color. Once I let that dry, I have two brushes that I use to buff with. This is my neutral brush, and I don't take anything but neutral. This is my antiquing brush. It has all kinds of colors in it, so it adds to my textures. I'm going to go ahead and buff this, even though it's not quite ready. This money's worth. If you take and buff wax like this when it's wet, it's going to antique it. Some spots are going to be higher than others. This particular one does not put a big shine on stuff, so I kind of like it for that reason. You can already see where it's drying right here. You can see it's lightening up already. So it will lighten back up. Not quite as light as it when you started, but it's pretty good. You can see it right in here. We're starting to lighten up. But if I want another coat, I can put another coat on there to make it shiny, but I don't like real shiny stuff. So that's the reason I like this one here, especially when you're doing faces and stuff. You don't want it to be too shiny. So I'm going to let you guys ask questions. I know it's getting late. So let me see if I can answer some of your questions. I'm going to switch the camera back over.
Kathryn, I'll go ahead and ask you some from the chat. We'll get those out of the way first. One question that someone had is they want to know how you fill the cracks if you have cracks in the piece.
Okay, let me talk about that real quick. Be right back. Okay, once again, this is a Rick Jensen thing that I do. I use this Duco cement, whoops, right here. And I use some of this bark dust. I collect this dust when I'm planing, or my husband's planing. I go in and pick out the dust afterwards. So it's a dust. And you just mix it together like a little paste, and you put it in the crack and just push it in there and let it dry. And it turns out pretty good because the Duco cement doesn't do like the super glue and stuff like that, or wood glue. It dries pretty clear. It'll be a little bit darker, but when you look at the pieces on the bark, let me grab this. You look on here, you can see that there's a grain difference in there already. So you can blend it. You can sand it down after you get done, make it smooth again. It works out pretty good.
And then another question someone had is they want to know where you got your arthritic glove, the glove that has the holes in the fin.
This glove here?
Yes.
I got this off of Amazon. I wear it. It's really good. It supports your wrist and everything. Since I have a hard time with arthritis, it really helps to support my wrist. And it's got the little, this is a mirrored backwards for me, but it has all these dots on it so I can get a better grip. And it really helps. What happens, you can see here on my glove where it's worn right here. Usually that's my hand, and I prefer to have a glove on there because when I carve, I've always put my hand against that bark to support myself so I don't slip.
And then a third question, can you talk a little bit about the chalk pen or pencil that you were using that would write on the bark?
Oh, yeah. All this stuff is in my booklet too. If you want to get online and download it, you'll find the references in there. And it's free. Don't think you're going to have to pay. Okay, this is a Fons and Porter. Whoop. Can you see it? This camera doesn't do the focus thing. But it says Fons and Porter. And you can get this at a quilting store. Joann's has it. You just have to hunt for it. It's not usually where the white chalk pencils are. But this is kind of nice because this is a 9mm pencil. So that it comes with a whole set of lead. And so you end up with a lot of lead. Well, I teach classes, so it's kind of nice for me anyway. So I go down and I can buy the pencils at Staples, mechanical pencils, 9mm, and I can make a whole bunch of these little things so that people can use them in class. You know, and just use the extra lead that they give us.
Okay, and that's all I've got. We'll go ahead and open the floor up. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, I got a question, Kathy. You have mentioned that you get your bark from a supplier, so this is going to be a kind of a long shot question. And also, if you can give Blake your suppliers and the links and put it on the web. Have you ever come across very dense, very dense, very hard bark? The reason why I say that, I get my bark. I'm from Minnesota, and in the western Minnesota, we can get the plains cottonwood bark, and a lot of it is very dense. I mean, you don't want that. Drop that on your foot, you'll break your toe. Is there any way you could soften up? Would soaking it in water, like having a dense piece of wood, would work, or do you have any idea about that?
Yeah, I've heard people taking it. Now, when I haul these houses out, you know, they soak for a little bit, and then, but I do not like to carve it when it's wet. It kind of mushes it instead of really carving it. It kind of mushes the fibers, so I don't really like to do that. I know the hardness of the bark that you're talking about because I have a whole lot of that, and you just have to work harder. Some people are power carvers and they can go right through that with power. I don't prefer power because it's too dirty. It's too dusty and noisy. I like it to be really quick. Really.
Yeah, I have tried to put power. Power does, yeah, it's very dusty, very dirty. You got to have a fan on.
Yes, I usually use that too, but it's still, it gets in the air. Even
Yeah,
with the mask.
I just wish there was some way to soften it up. I mean, the stuff I can get, you can use as a baseball bat. I mean, it is very dense. But I'll just give it a try with water.
I'd like to comment on that. I use 50% water and 50% alcohol, and I use a spray bottle and spray mine. And then I carve it. It's just a real light coat. And you carve it. And if you need some more, you spray some more.
Yeah, so, Daryl, have you tried that on bark?
Yes.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've done that with wood.
Yeah.
I just not got around to trying it out with the bark. Well, I'll give that a try. Thanks, Daryl.
Yeah.
Trying to change this a little bit. Any other questions?
One other question, Kathryn. They're wanting to know if you teach, and if so, where?
What is that?
They're wanting to know if you teach classes, and if so, where do you teach?
Well, we teach right here in my studio. Right for this year, I've canceled all my classes. Then I teach around the country. I'm trying to reduce that a little bit, but so some of the clubs will ask me to come out and teach, and I'll come out and teach for them. So I roam around.
And Kathryn, can you let them know about your website and what tools and stuff you have available on your website?
Okay, so we have two websites. One is more on my artsy side. That's artfromthebark.com. And let me see. Here they are. And the other one is our store. It's an online store. It's carvingsandhobbies.com. Can you see that? Maybe not, it's in a mirror. You have to be really good at reading. The mirror view, I'll post it on the Facebook post. So I put it out there. Yeah, so we sell a lot of different tools. I mean, we have the OCC tools, that's what I use mostly. Of course, we don't sell the file, that's only Woodcraft, and I use those a lot. Flex cut, we have a lot of flex cut tools. We have gloves, you know, we have the standard things. So we're getting ready to flip our store, so our online store over to a different company, trying to upgrade it so it's a lot easier to use. So you may see it down during that time while I'm trying to turn it over.
Okay, any other questions from anyone?
I got one question here. You talked about gluing the cracks, but do you find it stable if you were to accentuate a crack in like a rustic piece? Is it stable, or will it move at all? Or you find once it's dry, it's
On
dry?
the little cracks.
Yeah.
Okay, if we're talking about the regular cracks that's in the bark, the natural cracks. So what I do is I dump a whole bunch of super glue. It's really thin stuff. It's really thin super glue. And I'll dump it into the cracks. And I don't like to do that before I start carving on it if I'm going to keep the piece, you know, and then I'll clamp it. And then if I'm going to work with it immediately, I'll spray it with the accelerator. Otherwise, I just let it dry by itself. Problem is, when you do that, it's still not all the way down, you know, where the crack is. So as you're carving, you may end up opening it up a little bit further down. But you need the really thin stuff to get in the cracks. But I usually use it and it's pretty good.
But do you
I use
glue
a
it?
lot of it.
Do you glue it just for the smoothest sake? Like if you're doing a rustic piece and you want to work with the crack, do you find that the wood is stable and it won't crack more without gluing?
Yes. Well, if I may put a little bit, if I see that it's moving, I will put glue on it. But usually, you know, on the cracks, I like to leave the cracks. You know,
Yep.
Especially if there's a little lip or something that sticks out, gives you a little bit of extra bark to kind of show it off a little bit. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
I like to leave the cracks.
Yeah, good, good, yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions?
No question, but a comment. I've taken several classes with Kathy. She's an excellent instructor, and if you ever get the chance or the opportunity to take a class with her, go for it. You'll be so glad you did. She's a great instructor.
Hey, thanks, Leonard.
Kathy, I'm hoping to meet you this coming year again in October at our show in Conewago show in East Berlin.
Right.
Unfortunately,
try
we
to
didn't get to
rebook
do
that.
that this year.
I know.
So I'm hoping to meet you next year. So it was very nice to meet you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh,
A lot of
Kat-
information.
Kathy, how long would you say you spend on a project?
On these houses,
Yeah,
too long. At a certain point in time, you have to say that you're done, and a lot of times I don't do that. I get hung up on the shingles. I get to the shingles and I work and work and work the shingles to death because I think the shingles make the house. So I spend, it depends. If it's for a standard house like I was just showing you today, I can do it pretty quickly, maybe 3 days of constant work on it. A piece that I'm coming up with new design or something that has a lot of branches and stuff like that, that takes me a week or two to carve something like that out. I went on a cruise one time. I'll tell you a little story. We had a show coming up. I think it was, I can't remember the name of the show now. Artistry and Wood. And anyway, I wanted to carve this little house. This one here I was telling you about. You see all those leaves? We took a long cruise. It may have been a 14-day cruise. And the whole time I was on the cruise, I was doing the leaves. Everything else was done but the leaves and, of course, the branches in here. They do that at the same time. And it took me the whole 14 days of hiding in the cabin or going out on the balcony and carving those in before the show hit. So you can really get, take a long time on some of these houses, depending on what you want to carve on it.
Well, your work really shows. It's very, very nice. Quite
Oh,
nice.
thank you.
Super presentation, by the way. Very,
Oh,
very
thanks.
good.
It's kind of hard just to talk to the computer.
Kathryn, we're coming up on an hour and a half, so I'll go ahead and stop the questions for now. And thank
Okay.
you for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us and taking your time out to talk to us about bark carving. Again, make sure you go out and check out her website. You can get all the tools that she uses from her site. So make sure you go out and check that out. Just want to remind everybody that next week we will have James Ray Miller on. He'll be doing a demonstration on flat plane carving. Take advantage of some of the classes that are available out there. Again, Dave Stetson's teaching a Santa class now, and he'll be doing another class in December. Kevin Applegate has some classes out on his website that's scheduled, so make sure you check those out. Chris Hammock, that'll be coming on with us on October the 31st. He's constantly doing classes. Reach out to Chris if you want to take a design or a carving class from him. And then Alec Lacoste, who was on with us a couple of weeks ago, he continues to do classes, so reach out and contact him. He does bark classes as well, so contact Alec about classes. I want to thank everybody again for joining in today. We'll meet again next Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern time with James Ray Miller to talk about flat plane carvings. And until then, encourage each other. Make sure you go out and check out our videos on YouTube. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot.